There we go.
There it is.
We're live. April 5th, 2021. Ben Samuels, Ryan Ray. The facts.
Ryan Ray back in the driver's seat.
How it should be every time, but whatever. Benson, good to see you again. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. Can't complain. Good weekend. Good day so far.
You're about to spend an hour complaining, so don't say you can't complain. You can, and you're about to.
Listen, this podcast is literally called "Don't Let the Facts." Why, like, you got to come out of the gates this early? I mean, like, it's literally it's called "Don't Let the Facts Get in the Way of a Good Story." I mean, come on. Thank you for the ticker. Appreciate that. That's helpful. Maybe you need to remind yourself of that. Oh, that's actually much better. Thank you. Yeah. Do you have a third one? Do you have can you get bigger? Like one on top of that?
No, I think that's as big as that's our go big or go home right there. Oh man.
What about you? How was your Easter Sunday? I mean, it was Sunday for me. Jews on Christmas, Jews usually have Chinese food and go to the movies. On Easter, it's just like the first Sunday in April. What was your weekend like?
Wait, y'all have Chinese food and go to the movies? Really?
Oh yeah, if you talk to a Jewish person and they are not going to the movies and having Chinese food on Christmas, they're not a real Jew. It's an imposter.
This is all clear. Ben is the Jew, so he can make those comments. Ryan is just here to observe. So I don't want to say that.
True. I don't have the Jew card on me, I don't think, but I do have one. I own one.
We approve of those things being on you either. Ben.
Well, okay, I wasn't talking about.
No. You can say whatever you want. You can say whatever you want. I can't say it. I'm just saying, like, I'm protecting me here. I'm just saying, there's a line on the screen. The podcast listeners can't see that. You can say whatever you want about this stuff. I can't, and so I'm just being sure that when you say like, "Well, is that on me?" and I'm like, "Well, we don't want it to be on you, Ben." Like, I'm making sure that I'm supportive and not like, just don't get in trouble here. I'm gonna get in trouble.
I've got the Jew card. You've got the man card. We'll meet somewhere in the middle. But how was your Easter? Did you tell your kids you were going to bury a bunch of eggs and then not bury a single one to keep them busy, or what happened?
Easter was good. We got up, went to church. Well, my parents were in town and they had to leave early because my stepmother's mother wasn't feeling well, so they had to go back to that. But other than that, everything else went well, and went to the church and played and ate and had fun. Come back, got a nap in. Despite it was 5 o'clock, which is usually too late for me to nap, so was able to squeeze that in. That was nice. And we watched Night at the Museum last night. Have you watched that in a long time? God, it's such a good movie.
I haven't actually. So I feel like I saw that like when it came out in the movie theaters and haven't seen it since. But no, it's a good one.
Yeah. So I think there's like 3 of them now. Is that right? 2 or 3 of them? Yeah,
something like that.
So we watched the OG, and it was good. The CGI obviously is a little shaky, but who cares? It's really, really funny. And so ended the night with that, and then I watched Batman versus Robin, an animated film on HBO Max.
I thought you were going to talk about Godzilla versus.
Stop!
I thought that's what you were going to say.
I watched it twice already. Where are you at, dude?
Did you see it in the theaters or did you watch it at home? Because I feel like that's a movie that like you got to see on the big screen. That like you can see it at home, but like you got to really like to get the real experience. And so in answer to your question, I might have to like triple mask up and douse myself in some Purell and then go to the movie theaters. That's what people are doing these days, right? Triple masking and just like you taking a Purell bath. I mean, that's
I went to the movie theaters. I took my daughter to see Tom and Jerry for a day-daughter date, and we went to the movie theaters, and they had actually redone our theaters. We have now had the layback recliner chairs with a table with like the little tray table. Yeah. I was like, yes, sir. I don't know how they're gonna make a buck because there was like a third of the normal chairs in there and those weren't even full. And so
did I read that this movie did like 55 million in the first weekend, even with all the shutdowns and even with like the restrictions and everything? I mean, that's aggressive.
Possibly. I don't know. I haven't looked at the numbers, but you gotta go see it. And so to your point, I can go. Well, the kids are on spring break this week, so won't be going this week. But during the week, it's kind of tough for me to get out and go watch the movie in the theater. So we had to kind of make a plan for that. So But no, I woke up Wednesday morning when it came out on HBO Max and just turned it on, watched it, and then it was kid friendly enough for us, and so we watched it that night with the kids because they were all excited. So, Dad of the Year, they got to go Thursday, the last day before spring break, and tell their friends they got to watch King Kong. I keep want to say Hong Kong, King Kong versus Godzilla versus King Kong, and so they were kind of a little chest up on Thursday, and so it was good. I've been watching a lot of movies lately, so there's that. Oh, by the way, can I just give DRW a quick shout out here?
Absolutely.
In his book, he talks about in school struggling to pay attention, and he got a stress ball, and he squeezed the stress ball. I have learned, this is Ben told me about Bitcoin a while back, so I bought Bitcoin right here. Right, this is how it works, right? I don't know why I paid $50,000 for this. It seemed a little pricey.
I mean, is it solid? Is it solid uranium? I mean,
no, I think it's just cheap metal. Is it? So I don't understand the value. I don't understand Bitcoin. But I've got a stack of these, and so $50K piece. I don't understand what's going on here. But anyways, I've learned that just holding this and just look, flip it in my hand like this. Like I'm tempted to pick my phone up and do stuff and get distracted. Just something like that. It's a good tip. So there you go.
So when I used to play poker a lot more seriously and a lot more regularly, I just got in the habit of with my left hand when I was sitting at the desk. So if I was using the mouse but not really typing very much, I would just kind of shuffle poker chips with the other hand. And then I think I was on a podcast I was on a podcast one time and I was like doing it absentmindedly, and my co-host was like, "That is really effing loud. Can you stop that, please?"
So yeah, I've learned because I'm like, let me play a game on my phone. I get distracted. I've just learned just a little twist there. So, anyways, Mr. Samuels, your favorite person came out, and this is not April Fool's. I hope. Okay, I hope it's April Fool's, but I don't think it is. And that the U.S. is looking to push a global tax initiative for corporations. I know you're a big fan of taxes and for big government and for corporations. So this made your Easter Passover week, I'm sure.
Oh no, this is a win all the way around. I mean, I'm a huge Janet Yellen fan. I love corporate taxes. I love federal tax, the tax structure to begin with. I adore the idea of trying to not only tax the people to hell, but also now cross borders. I mean, like I love where this is going. Let's unpack this a little bit. By the way, for those of you listening, not watching this, there's a big banner that says "Don't let the facts" running across the screen. Let's keep that in mind there. Oh my Lord! I mean, it's amazing to me to see some of the things that are being talked about. So I don't think last week we got into. Did we talk about any of the Biden infrastructure plan? Sort of what that looked like?
I don't think so. I don't think so
either. So I mean, you look at the. I don't know. It's a really scary picture that's being painted here. I mean, we're less than 3 months in to a 4-year term, and it's interesting because we had this podcast running for. So we had Bring in the Closures running, I believe, most of year 3 in Trump's presidency, if I had my timeline right, and then we started. Yeah. So
debating over how bad COVID would be.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And then so then we took a respite for a little while, and we ran this one that we started in Trump's presidency, and now obviously keep running it. And I know that time and time again, we were at odds about some of the things that I was saying about Trump, but I kept telling you, like, just wait, this is not a one-sided thing. This is not a I'm only coming after the guy because he's on the right side of the aisle. This is purely so I say that to say I think that people like myself, and I certainly was bracing for impact for what the Biden administration was going to do and how they were going to do it. You and I talked about this dynamic of when Trump decided, and I hesitate to blame it on Trump because this is not a Trump specific thing, but for the sake of this argument. So when Trump, made it a point to basically say, I'm going to do what I want, and if you want to get in my way, I'm going to try to circumvent you wherever and whenever possible, and you just have to play my game. I think that's to a degree that's the president's prerogative, but to think that the other side of the aisle wasn't going to do the exact same thing is just foolish. And we're seeing that now. And again, we're only less than 3 months in, and I think it's going to get substantively worse. The scary part to me is to think that these are the policies that we're seeing being talked about right now are sort of what I believe the Biden administration probably thinks are the low-hanging fruit and some of the things that are maybe more middle of the aisle, because as you get deeper into the presidency and you kind of become entrenched, that's when you really, and especially once you come to the back end of the presidency, that's when you really press the throttle down, right? And so through that prism, this global tax initiative, so it just came out today. So there have been reports across the board. I couldn't even necessarily tell you, sitting here right now, and maybe I'll throw this question to you because I know that I think that you and Ellen spoke about it a little bit earlier today. I mean, I'm curious. So putting the hat on of Janet or one of her cronies or someone else in the Biden administration, what is the impetus for something like this when looking at this from the macro perspective of what is the possible win for this sort of proposal? Because I mean, this seems to be at its face basically a pure money and power grab, but also it seems to be like just inviting the people that would be affected by this and the companies that would be affected by this to find very easy ways to circumvent. It doesn't seem to be something that you can really plant a flag on. It doesn't seem to be really something that you could, you're not about to overhaul the tax legislation in the country to open up the borders of taxation. I mean, what's the win here? So assuming, let's say that the left was able to just do this and put it in place because Yellen decided that she wanted to. What's the goal?
How hard
I'm
we
baffled here.
How hard are we going?
We're going hard in the paint, man. This is
going full throttle.
Absolutely. Let's go.
It's one of the most discriminatory practices that I've ever seen in my entire life. I mean,
yes.
like it is, because here's what you're saying. So you have to take your American hat off for just half a second. And what you're saying is that, because this is her argument in the Axios piece, is that they're trying to keep jobs from going overseas. So let's just take that off for half a second, wherever you come on that debate. What you're saying is that low-income earners in other countries should not be able to get jobs. That's what you're saying. Now, you might believe that policy is a good policy or not, but don't lecture me on how much you care for the poor and how much you eradicate poverty, because you are trying to prevent people in other countries who make fundamentally less than American wage earners from getting jobs.
That's interesting. I kind of took it the other way. I mean, I think we're sort of saying the same thing when I say this, but I took it as more, the low-paying jobs don't have a home in America. Anyone that, but we don't care what the wages are internationally. And so, we're going to exacerbate the child labor issues. We're going to exacerbate the wage
inequity. Jobs here. That's the part of the thing.
But I think axiomatic to that. So I think I'm reading between the tea leaves, and I guess I'm asking you if you think I'm taking too far of liberty here. But it seemed to be the motive was to keep the high-paying jobs and the quote-unquote good jobs in America, but to let the other ones sort of be serviced by the international community.
Well, I think it's
did you not read it that way?
Yes and no. So, I mean, on some level, what I'm saying is it won't work out that way, right? So if you're China and I wanted to open a factory in China, China is well within its rights to say, okay, Mr. Ray, we're going to charge you 26% tax because that's the global tax. Oh, but we're going to give you a 30% tax break over here for walking outside at Wednesday at noon. And, right. So these countries would just figure out loopholes to do this. So I don't think it would actually work in practice because they'll just figure out other ways to offset the taxes. But if they didn't, which is what she's wanting, or she says she wants, I don't believe her, but let's just say if I take her at her word, then you're saying go to China and institute this tax, which then raises the cost of labor in China and is trying to make it more fair with the U.S. It doesn't, but that's what you're saying, in hopes of keeping the jobs around. And I don't think that the reason the jobs are leaving, and I know we don't agree on this per se, but on some level has to do with minimum wage, taxes, and all these other things. And so what you're trying to say is you're trying to raise the standard of living globally, but the standard of living globally is not what it is in the U.S. And you can't raise that by tax. You can't just make that happen by tax policy. Like, that's just not how it works. The other thing is there's several things here. I think it's a protection of the reserve currency for the dollar, right? You have the U.S. leading the charge to implement corporate tax policy globally. Second, let's be honest here. This is not a Trump or an anti-Trump comment. Biden is huge on Wall Street. Huge. Look at his cabinet. Look at his appointees. Kamala Harris raised the most money from billionaires when she was running for president before she got out. They are,
I mean,
pockets of Wall Street. This is a
he
great
could.
Wall Street idea.
Oh no, he could have just called the HR manager for Goldman Sachs and gotten his cabinet staffed. It would have been a shorter conversation. I mean,
well, yeah, obviously, right. And so this is great for big business because Ryan Inc. or Samuels Inc. who wants to go, this is something. Think about this, Ben. If you're like, okay, listen, I'm out in the Permian Basin. Here's what I need. I need to open a widget shop because I think I can service oil and gas companies. You're like, $15 an hour because even though the minimum wage is less, you're not paying anyone less than $15 an hour out in the Permian Basin. Who's worth anything? I don't know. What's the practical minimum wage out there, you think, for decent labor? 15 to 20?
I mean, if you're doing anything with any sort of thought, I mean, you're paying anything less than $18 an hour, you're
right.
asking for
right.
trouble.
So the practical minimum wage is $18 an hour, right? So if you're like, okay, well, listen, I can, but you know what? I tell you what I can do. I can call the Philippines. And I can pay a top level VA there, $7 an hour, or $8 an hour, and that's above their, that's a good wage for them. To call these companies in the Permian Basin, and now I can make money, pay them a good wage. I can't make money at 18. It's too big of a risk right now. Well, now you're taxing Samuels Inc. because now Samuels is like, poof, I got to pay 26% tax on this stuff in the Philippines, maybe, or you convolute it, you make it more complicated. Or if you said, you know what, I like people in the Philippines, I want to go down there and open my own VA company down there. And I'm going to help people in the Philippines get a job because it's low cost. I can get jobs. I can provide service. Well, guess what? Now your tax burden just went up. This is a great success for all the big business, which is who the left routinely tells me they hate. They routinely tell me they hate. But guess what? When COVID rolls out, all of a sudden, big pharma is our friend. When tax policy rolls out and it helps the rich and it helps the elite, that's good. The left, they're just as bad as the Republicans on these type of things. And they make the rules that help the top 1%, and then they pretend like they're helping everyone else. And all they do, like any government policy, by and large, is hurt average Americans like you, me, and our listeners. And it's quite frustrating. And the final thing I'll say is when you talk about barrier of entry, this is a stifling mechanism for the economy, right? So if Ben Samuels says, you know what, I want to go open VA companies all over the world, but you don't have, let's say you had $200,000 startup capital. Well, guess what? Now you're like, oh my gosh, I got to hire an international CPA to figure all this out. I can hire more lawyers. Okay, that 200,000, I got to devote more money to that. Like you take away from your startup capital, which stifles economic growth.
No, yeah, that's a great point, and that's sort of what I was alluding to before. I guess I'm struggling with the macro idea that, I mean, it seems to fly in the face of every economic policy ever that increasing taxation gives money to the bottom. Like that equation doesn't work. We've tried it before. It never works. It never has. It's not even the point. I mean, when you talk about let me say it differently. The most alarming thing to me was, and I'm trying to find the quote, but I can't find it. Was when one of her direct quotes when she was talking about this yesterday was essentially, we need to do this because we need to fight climate change and racial injustice. And I don't see how you go from a minimum corporate tax rate, a minimum tax rate, to this policy helps climate change and racial justice. Like, it seems to be more virtue signaling of the same, where it's just kind of this hollow rhetoric of this. Like, it seems like everything the left talks about now is racial injustice and climate change. And I mean, to a degree, let me ask you this. So unless you disagree with that, let me ask you a question, and then we can maybe move on. I mean, is it feasible for the left to do anything in government under any other guise other than racial injustice and climate change, or is that just the bell? Is that just the gong they're going to continue to hit no matter what you're talking about? And I mean, depending, so that's A, and B is, I mean, to what degree do you think that lessens their platform? Because I'm already tired of it, although I've been listening to a lot more over the last few years than maybe some others. Like, I'm already tired of it. We're only 3 months in. How long does it take before a critical mass of the country kind of keys in on this issue of, you can't keep talking about everything under the sun and tie it back to racial injustice and climate change? It just doesn't work.
a year ago and a month ago, I would have said you're absolutely right. Today, I have no idea. I have no idea because we've seen how Americans and the world reacts to panic. And so I was, and been contested by this. I was one of the few that was against the lockdowns from day one. From day one, I've never been for the lockdowns. Ben, you can correct me on the record if I'm wrong. The only thing I've ever advocated for was the elderly population. We should consider maybe giving them some kind of subsidy so that they could stay at home for a period of time. I don't think you have to agree with my policy or not, but that's been my policy from day one. That's where I've said. So, we give them, I think I said 3 months because we didn't know how long it's last. Give them 3 months worth of food and shelter and rent or whatever, just to see how things go. Oh, by the way, that'd been far cheaper than anything we've ever done. Just so we're clear, we would have saved trillions of dollars if we'd have done that. And you could have done it a few more times. I don't know. We didn't do that, so who knows what would have happened. But we didn't do that, and so that was my stance. That was my concession. I thought that was a fair concession at the time. And I didn't think that Americans would have willingly locked in their homes, didn't leave for months on end. And for us, people say, well, what'd you do? Well, we tried to live our life as much as we could. We had friends over that wanted to come over. We couldn't go out to eat or anything, obviously, because that wasn't available to us. But anything that we could do normally, we did. And that took the risk of getting COVID and dying, and for whatever risk you think that is, that's the risk we took, because that was a risk that we were willing to take. And it's not that I'm some extreme risk taker. I don't jump out of planes or climb mountains, but there's acceptable risk. But I was stunned how many Americans went in. And now in Texas, I'm still stunned at how many are still wearing the mask.
And so, yeah, no, I think, I don't think that we're by any means on the other side of this issue, like globally or even domestically, but in the effort of sort of coming to a meeting the minds here. I mean, yeah, so when we first started, when we were talking about this on bringing the closures, you and I felt very differently. I mean, I took the opposite stance. I wouldn't necessarily qualify my stance as pro-lockdown, although I was firmly entrenched in this idea or the mantra that we didn't have enough data, and if what we were being told was accurate, that the virus was as deadly and as voracious as it was being purported to be, then there needed to be some sort of measures to protect the people at large.
But, I think your quote is that everyone seems to agree on this, and they're all telling us the same thing, and that gave you the confidence that we should take it more seriously than what I did. I think would be a fair assessment. Like you said, all these people are agreeing on something. It seems that we should take that with more caution than what I was taking it. Would that be close to what you're saying?
With the really important caveat here, that I thought it was just too early to be making decisions one way or the other. Didn't have enough data one way or the other to make that decision. And if and you can give me you can either echo this or not, but somewhat quickly, once the data became data that you could actually read and look at, I got walked off that stance very quickly in terms of this. Yeah, so now you and I are very much in the same boat. And to your point, the most disheartening thing of this entire process to me has been, and I don't think it's hyperbolic to do this motion or to say this, but I mean, has by and large the American people have just okay, government, like, what do you want me to do and how do you want me to do it, and have given up that freedom. And what that tells me is not that the people were afraid of the ramifications of COVID. The people were what it tells me is that most of this country doesn't understand what it actually means to be American. Because if you can get to a place where you're okay with the government saying jump and your role is to say how high, that's fundamentally not what this country is based on. We are not a collective group that is supposed to just say, yes, I agree with you, President Xi, you're right. That's not the dynamic here. It's been fascinating to me to see wealthy elite all the way down to the destitute just, okay, government, you're telling, or okay, CDC, you're saying this, so I must believe you. And then, not being able to see the nuance of, Fauci says one thing on air, and then, the next day in an article, he'll say something else. Trump says this, and then, I mean, it goes both sides, right? So in the Trump White House, everybody was getting tested all the time. They had to wear masks. I mean, like, all those things were happening. while his press secretary and himself were saying, "Oh, there's nothing here, nothing to worry about," and so it's on both sides of the aisle. And I think what I guess what I'm saying is, I mean, it's a easy conclusion to make, but it screams to me that the people, the populace, need to take an active role in this dynamic, or we're going to wake up one day and it's going to be 1984. It's going to be very Orwellian. I mean, to a degree, I think we're already down that path. But I don't want to get on a diatribe here, but I think it's lost on some people the importance of the populace fighting back, not fighting back in literal like military terms, but punching back when told these things. And it's a totally different realm, and I don't know if you want to talk about it on air on this podcast here, but stepping away from the government, what's happened at your church and other churches around the nation, and my synagogue, by the way, you and I didn't even talk about this, but my synagogue in Houston is still not gathering. I mean, they're still willfully, electively not gathering, and I mean, I think that's one of the most egregious sins that a synagogue or church can perpetrate. I mean, I think the fact that these people, that these leaders of these religious, these religious leaders are making the choice to tell their people, you are not allowed to gather. I mean, the Jewish people were, we were scattered across the world multiple times. There have been times in history where we were killed on sight if we were, praying. We had to hide in caves. I mean, and people did that to maintain the faith. And now in 2020, with the luxuries that we have, we are electively choosing not to gather. I mean, and so I know I don't want completely left on here, but I mean, so whatever you want to pick up with what I just said and respond to, but.
I mean, it's all tied together, I think, and that's the thing. Right. Is that, so like with you, I remember you called me up like, hey, I think I was too. I can't remember how you put it, but you said I was right, which is, for you, it's hard to say. And so, it's like, okay, the point isn't necessarily like today. I would be not content. I'd be frustrated, but it would be better for people to come in today and say, listen, okay, I went along with the COVID stuff, but I can't do it no more. Like, I can't take it no more. And it feels as if there's a certain segment that they're never going to say that what they did or what they allowed to happen was right or wrong. There's a church out in California and they shut down for a while. And then eventually they said, you know what? Okay, we shut down. We gave you guys the benefit of the doubt. We're meeting again. Sorry. Just deal with it. Okay, I didn't like their stance early on, but at least I respected the fact they said, we gave you a chance. We're done with this. Moving on. And so many people, I think, are afraid to take that stance. And so when you talk about, government overreach, there is no spot they can stop at this point. And this isn't like tinfoil hat time. I'm just being practical. There's no spot they can stop. If you want to pick on Trump forced companies to make ventilators last year that we didn't use. Forced companies to make ventilators that we didn't use, just so we're clear. Right, you're talking about Biden and printing the money. Okay, Trump printed money. And to your point, this is a bipartisan issue. And I think one of my frustrations was you talk about the churches. I don't think if Obama or if Biden were to be or Hillary would to have been in, that the churches would have went home. I don't think that would have happened. I think they would have been, or if they did, they wouldn't have went home for as long. And I've held that position as well. I don't. There's no way you do this under a liberal. Because you'd be suspicious of other motivations. So part of my frustration has been is that Trump, being under the Trump administration, you kind of got lulled into a sense of security. And so now here you go. And so our church has been meeting for some time, but we didn't meet for quite some time. And I was extremely critical of them and still critical of them for all that.
I think it's really important, and I think it was tough to have this conversation, in the Trump era. Arguably it's tough, and it's no easier now. But I mean, for those listening, I mean, don't get it twisted. I don't care who's in office. I don't care who controls Congress. I don't care what the current makeup of our government is. The game here is government versus the people. It's not right versus left. It's not across the aisle. This is the power elite versus everybody else. And to the degree that they can keep us confused and angry and pissed off. And I mean, that's the game. The game is to keep us against each other, and the racial injustice, the wealth inequity. I mean, you pick a thing. This is government versus the people. This is not Democrat versus Republican. This is not Trump versus Biden. And so, I mean, it's interesting to me. I'm going to use the word interesting. I mean, it's interesting to me how quickly both sides sort of entrenched in their corners. I mean, these days, I don't think it's a possibility, and I mean a literal possibility, to speak to someone that fervently believes something on the other side of the aisle and come to an agreement, because axiomatic to both platforms these days is, if I agree with you, then I am one of you. Or said differently, if I disagree with you, then I'm supporting my side. If we agree on something, then I have somehow weakened my position, and that's not okay. And I mean, in that construct, who wins? The power elite every time. It doesn't matter what you're talking about, right? And so I think the reframing of this issue is the most important takeaway. And I'm not calling for any sort of action. I'm not calling for any sort of revolt. Yeah. I'm just speaking to that for so long now. It's not a Trump or Biden thing. I mean, for so long now, the government has been incentivized, and the media has been incentivized to keep us distracted, stupid, and angry. And at what point? Let me ask you this. Maybe there's a question you can answer here. I mean, at what point do you see that trend potentially reversing? I mean, at what point do you think, or do you think that we will reach a point where a critical mass of this country understands that dynamic well enough that the government won't be able to play that card anymore? Or is this is a self-fulfilling prophecy, and we're just in it for the long haul? I mean, is there an out?
I'm afraid not. I mean, so here was my thought. And so I thought Trump was going to lose. I don't know if I said it on the show. I told you, but I said the show. I thought Trump was going to lose in 16, like most people, obviously. And I thought when that happened, you would have 8 years of Obama and then going into 4 years of Hillary, right? So you're having a 12-year reign of the Democrats.
Thank God that didn't happen.
I thought that might incentivize the Republicans to reevaluate how they lived in the country. And I'm again, not about civil war. I'm talking about, more states' rights, less federal dependency, things like that. Trump's message was, make America great again. We want to revitalize this nation. Whatever you think about that, that's what it was. Okay. Oddly enough, that was considered racist, but restoring the soul was not. We can talk about that another day. I don't know how that plays out. And so what happened was, when Trump won, the Republicans consolidated power to the federal government, right? They consolidated power. If you look at what the left does, like with drug laws, Colorado, we've talked about this before, Washington, Oregon, they just pass a drug referendum and they go about their business, and they tell the feds to go stick it to themselves. The conservatives don't really have that backbone. And until they have that backbone, I think we're going to continue to see it. I'm fine with, so first off, I'm pro legalization, but second off, I'm fine with Colorado telling the feds that they're going to do their own thing on marijuana or whatever. I don't know what else is legal in which states, but whatever the drug rules are in Colorado, I'm fine with that. I don't have a problem with that. I'm also fine with a lot of other things on state rights levels. We have got to get out of this mindset that because we're all in the United States, we're all Americans, that we all have to live under these same set of federal rules. The people in San Francisco and the people in Hood County, Texas, there's probably some overlap, but not a lot, right? And so when you look at that, you're like, well, why are we making rules for San Francisco and for Hood County, Texas? It just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't. Those are two different demographics. And so trying to make rules for these sets of populations does not make sense. Let San Fran do San Fran. Let Hood County do Hood County. And if I want to move to San Fran, I will. If I want to live in Hood County, let me live in Hood County. I don't need the San Fran rules in Hood County. And so it's this power dynamic that's intoxicating.
I mean, yeah.
And
you
agree better with it, to be clear. If they appointed me or you be president today, the temptation and the power would be hard to give up. And I don't think we really. Maybe I'm curious you think about this. Do you think that voters believe that they would do better in power? Because I don't think I would. Like, if you made me president today, I would probably try to be as libertarian as I could early on. Right? Yeah, air quotes. I'd be libertarian as I could early on. Try to roll back much regulation, try to pass much stuff. But then I'd be like, well, listen, what's one deal going to hurt for set my family up for 4 generations? Like, what's one? Like that temptation is real and it's there. And I don't know if I can escape it.
Yeah, no, I think that's an important dynamic. I think you're probably right. I think the misnomer here is that, I mean, Trump came into office with like gung ho, and he said, "Hey, I'm going to tear down regulation. I'm going to bring us, I'm going to bring us back or whatever." And I mean, he did to a degree. There was a lot of regulations that he took away, but also at the same time, I think there were a lot of things that he did in that, with that goal in mind that were actually detrimental to the country. Here, I mean, you've heard me say this off air. I don't know if I've ever said this on air, but I mean, I have a unique, not unique to me, but just a different take on the federal government than I think most do. I mean, in my opinion, the federal government's job, they have 2 jobs. They have one is to protect the borders, make sure that we're not getting attacked domestically. And number 2 is to build interstate roads, infrastructure, etc. Full stop. End of sentence. Nothing else. Everything else should be delegated to the states. And the states should only be doing a handful of things that they sort of have to figure out, and then everything else is left to the people. Now, if you read the Constitution and you talk about sort of the impetus for the country, that is what the structure was meant to be. The structure was meant to be a very small federal government, a somewhat larger state government, and then the people get to do everything else. And we have moved the needle so far that now, I mean, we live in a country that you're in theory, like, it's interesting to me because we keep talking about like freedoms and the people in this country being free. I don't know about you. I feel free in comparison to like if I lived in Xinjiang, but like I don't feel free when I think of the word free. I don't think that's not what I believe that is the construct that we live in. And for those listening, don't let the facts, anyone listening at the SEC or anything else, or any, FTC or any other of the acronyms.
Yeah,
don't let the facts here.
Yes.
And I wasn't going to name the real ones, but like any of these,
It's a comedy show.
but I mean, it's, I mean, you're free unless the government doesn't want you to do what you're doing, and then you're no longer free. And that to me is not freedom, right?
Well, and this is where, to your point about the government pitting us against each other, it's, and I don't know if we've ever talked about this. I'm curious. But you sit there and, sorry, Hunter Biden just admitted to smoking oh, never mind. It went away. I saw Hunter Biden just admitted to smoking something, and I was trying to figure it out. At
least he didn't pull on Matt Gaetz. Too soon? Soon?
No. What's the latest on that, by the way? Have you been following that?
No.
Okay. Anyways, the feds, if you wake up in the morning and you think that the job of the prosecutor is to protect you, we should probably have a talk offline.
Wait, say that again.
If you wake up in the morning and you think the prosecutor's job, the DA's job, is to protect you, we should probably have a talk offline.
Oh yeah, yeah, mm-hmm, yeah.
A long talk, like clear out the rest of the day and tomorrow, because we've got a lot to unpack.
You're gonna need to dig in.
But okay, and I'm not saying that all DAs are bad; they're not bad people. I'm not saying that. I'm saying they do bad things, though, right? They prosecute people who should be prosecuted, and there's no sense from their perspective, by and large, of what justice is and isn't. But they are the representation of justice. And Ben, let me ask you this serious question: who are they protecting by throwing people in jail for a dime bag?
They're protecting the people that own the private prisons. They're protecting the lawmakers. They're protecting the people that get civil asset forfeiture. They're protecting the politicians. They're protecting. I can keep going if you'd like.
Yeah, I mean,
they're certainly not protecting the citizens or the citizenry, or they're certainly, it's not the impetus to clear the streets of drugs. I mean, I heard a judge. So there was a Netflix special yesterday that I was watching on. It's called White Boy Rick. He was talking. Have you heard of White Boy Rick, by the way?
No, ring the bell.
Long story short, he was an FBI informant that got put out into the streets of Detroit to deal drugs back in the 80s. He was an informant for them for about 14 months. He then got cut off as a CI, but continued to deal drugs. They then threw the book at him, arrested him. He's now, I think he's either still in prison or he just got out. I mean, like this was he served like 30 years for a non-violent drug offense when the impetus was the government, but it was talking about. I guess that's really the point. I mean, like so I mean, this guy was an agent of the government, for lack of better terminology, and then the government decided that they no longer had any use for him, and they just threw the book at him. And I mean, this kid was, I mean, a literal kid. I think he was 14 when he started as a CI, and he started dealing like tons and tons of heroin for the government. I mean, yeah, no, right. Or no, but no. What I was going to say is, or you could zoom forward 15 years and you can talk about what George Bush, Senior, did, to sort of start the war on drugs and start the race war. I mean, these things are, this idea that the prosecution or the DOJ, I mean, any of these law-making bodies are incentivized to actually enact like law and order or have equitable, treatment under the law. I mean, it seems to be an absolute joke. I mean, maybe that's too strong. Maybe it's not. It's not strong. It's not strong. It's not strong at all. But maybe I shouldn't have said that like live on air.
I mean, I'll follow it up. The fact that the Biden administration is wanting to print trillions of dollars and increase your taxes shows you how much they hate you. I can go stronger. Like that was just a little.
Well, so that's an interesting one. I mean, I'm going to take us off to the left here on a tangent, and you can veer us back if you want. But I mean, I think we might have talked about this already, actually. And if we did, you, go ahead and stop me. But when looking at the Biden infrastructure plan, so it's interesting. Okay, so at a macro level, let's see if we can kind of unpack this piece by piece, and you tell me if you agree with some of this. So at a macro level, I believe we could probably both agree that the quality of the infrastructure, and I mean like the quality of the roads and the interconnectedness of the roads and other infrastructure in this country needs a ton of work. Do we agree there? Like bridges are falling apart, infrastructure is falling apart. Okay, so we agree that there's work to be done. So in this country, the government doesn't spend any of their money, right? Because like they don't have any money because it's all ours, right? And so here's the kicker. So you say
because they tax it from us, but go ahead.
Well, it is ours. They're stealing it, but it is ours. But no, it's our money. They're just taking it, misappropriating it to themselves, but it's ours.
If it was ours, they couldn't print it at will.
But no, but when they print it, when they print it, they're not creating a bill for themselves. But when they print it, they're not creating an invoice for themselves. They're creating an invoice for you and me.
Have you heard of the repo market? Oh, create an invoice. Yes. Well, okay. Well, okay. Back. Have you heard of the repo market? Yeah, that's an invoice for you and me too. Come about.
What I'm getting at here is, okay, so if Biden wants to put out a $2 trillion infrastructure plan, I actually don't know what the deficit is right now because of everything that's going on recently. I mean, is it? So I'm going to use a round number, 25 billion or 25 trillion. I think it's closer to 28. But as I'm talking, maybe Ryan can pull it up here. But
national debt. Oh, sorry, I thought it was the right site. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I thought I had it pulled up here.
No worries. So I mean, using 25 trillion for a second, if you add another 2 trillion as an infrastructure plan, or 6 trillion, or another 25 trillion, at this point you're talking about numbers. I mean, so if you want to increase the tax rate to 95% for everybody across the board, you still don't pay that bill. You're still not going to get out ahead. You're not going to. I mean, and so is the answer here to literally take the liquidity out of the market by the trillions? And how do you do that? Is the answer here to just print yourself into oblivion? And so, like, in one side on one coin, or like side of the coin, I can make an argument, quote unquote, that at this point, okay, so if you want to spend 2 trillion on infrastructure, or if you want to spend 6, go ahead and just spend what's necessary. Because if you spend it, the taxpayers are never going to get out of the hole anyways. The other side of the coin is, does the government really have the right to just print at will? Like, are they like, should they be allowed to just decide, hey, we're going to turn the money printer on and just go? Or is that something that the people should have a say in, God forbid, because we're actually the ones paying it? The second one was more facetious than anything. Go ahead.
Okay, so the national debt, which is not the deficit, the national debt is $28 trillion and climbing, in case you're wondering, and climbing, it's going up.
So it is 28. Okay, so I was close.
Yeah. The deficit is 3.2 trillion. So
the 2020 fiscal year deficit?
Yeah, I believe so.
Or 2021, because if it's 2021, that's a problem.
It just has it as the U.S. federal budget deficit. So, but it also has. I mean, okay, so here you go. U.S. federal debt to GDP ratio. Do you want to play this game? Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Mr. Samuels, come on down. In 1960, the U.S. federal debt to GDP ratio was greater or less than 50%.
Less.
Wrong. 53.05. In 1980, was it greater or less than 50%?
Greater.
Wrong again. 34.55. In 2000, was it greater or less than 50%?
Wait, what was the original question? Maybe I heard the original question wrong.
No, you're answering the right way. You're answering the right way.
Wait.
Your answers are consistent. It's just the numbers flopped. U.S. federal debt to GDP in 2000 was greater or less than 50%. So it was.
Oh, definitely less. Oh, so the most recent is definitely less then.
Wrong. 58.
What in the world?
What is okay? Okay, now this is now current. Whatever current is to this thing. The U.S. federal debt to GDP is greater or less than 100%.
Definitely greater. It's got to be greater.
129.96. My camera went off. The commies are trying to keep me down.
Oh my God. Yeah, they did.
From 2000 to 2021, it was 59% to 130.
Well, so remind me again, we were at a budget surplus at the end of Clinton, right? And that was what, 96?
A budget surplus doesn't mean a debt surplus.
No, clearly. But,
yeah. Okay.
we were at a budget surplus, and that's 96, if I have my timeline right. Is that right?
No, he got out in 99. I mean 2000. Bush took over.
Yeah, that's right. He got elected in 96. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, he got 96, yeah.
It just no. So I mean, I don't know. I could wax poetic about that a bunch, but
hold on, real quick. The corporate tax revenue right now, $214 billion. Is that right? No, 214 million. Is that wait? Yeah, yes, billion. 214 billion. The deficit is 3.2 trillion.
So, like, next year we can pay that off, right? That's how that math works.
That's basically how that math.
I mean, if the government had invested the tax income in Bitcoin like it's earlier this year, we could have paid it off.
That's what they should do. They should put $1 trillion, pump it into Doge, and then sell it. Because Doge has the potential to like just go up crazy proportions and then like get out, like pump and dump Doge one time. I'd vote for that. $1 trillion in a Doge.
So neither here nor there. Quick aside, since you mentioned Hunter Biden, I pulled up an article here. So he was asked, you grew up in politics. Did you not think that you might be putting a big bullseye on yourself by taking the Burisma board position? You know what his quote was? You know what his answer was? The difference between the politics that you're talking about in terms of the last 4 years is a very different game. And I don't want ever want to again hand a weapon to people that would use it in an illegitimate way that they used the weapon of me against my dad. Like, seriously?
What does that even mean?
What it means is he's blaming Trump for taking advantage of his position, and he's trying to abscond himself from all culpability whatsoever because he was just a puppet, I guess, because he wasn't the board member.
I get it now. He's blaming Trump for his dad firing the prosecutor when his dad was the VP before Trump came in. They
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
Sorry, I was the timelines are a little tricky because it's prior to Trump, and so it kind of gets weird when those things come into play.
Well, don't let the facts. I mean, it's right there. You're letting the facts.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Oh, this is fascinating. Okay, what is our trade deficit with China? You think?
Trade deficit. Oh, that's a big number. Trade deficit in China. Oh God, 1.8 trillion. It's a huge number.
This number moves so fast. Let's see here. So that'd be 100,000. Yeah, 311 billion.
No, it's more than that.
I'll look for a different.
Wait, no. Maybe that math, maybe your math, or maybe the math you're talking about doesn't include corporate or government bonds. If it includes bonds, it's way bigger than that.
Are you talking about the debt that they hold?
Yeah, isn't that what you asked?
Hold as much debt as you think. It's only like maybe a fifth of our debt they hold. And, serious question. No, serious question. Why don't we just print the money and pay off the debt that we owe them?
Why? Why would you? Why would you do that?
Why wouldn't you?
To what end? Number one. What's that?
Save the interest.
But isn't that massively deflationary?
I don't know. Is there anything deflationary? Like, tell me what's deflationary. I mean, we're just printing it now to pay them off. What's the difference?
So, okay. So I was still under, but I was close. So it looks like China owns a little under 1.1 trillion of U.S. Treasury securities.
Mm-hmm. So
I don't know.
28 trillion.
Right. I mean, why? So, I mean, why would you want to pay? I don't understand. Why would you want to pay that bill off? What's the positive of that? Like, if you pay them in full and you get them off the books, like, yeah, it helps your debt, but like you've just given them $1 trillion. Like, I would imagine you don't want to just like I imagine you don't want to be like lining the pockets.
Right? That's true. That's true. I see that you're saying. Oh, so let me ask you this. Okay, what if you called China up and said, China, we'll remove one strategic military base across the world, but you forgive our debt? Obviously, it can't be in the U.S., but anywhere else in the world. We'll remove it. Would you do it?
Do they pick or do we pick?
They pick.
They pick now.
Why? We got like 500 military bases. We can't just one. Just build one next door. I didn't say you couldn't build another one. I said you can't build that one.
we're just gonna dig it up and pick it up and move it 2 miles this way.
You go out like, hey, we're shutting this down. We're going down the road a mile. Like, what are you doing, guys? We said we'd shut this one down. This one, not that. So
this is a quick story for you, because this is one of my favorite stories of part of my family. So my grandfather used to live in Palo Alto, California. Super nice place in California. Homes are like crazy expensive or whatever. And he had one of these. He had a home that was actually built by and designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, the artist. Do you happen to know who that is?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it was this like beautiful masterpiece of a home. And when he, later in life, he decided that he wanted to move. He wanted to move somewhere else, and so he was trying to like figure out where to move. And when I tell you that he had a number of engineering firms come out to the house, and literally his plan was he wanted to cut the house into thirds, foundation and all, and then pick the house up and move it to another property and set the house down. Like, I mean, we're talking about, I don't know how much that would weigh, but like literally cutting, it was like maybe so it was a single story home, maybe 3,500 square feet, not huge, but certainly not small. And that, yeah, there was like there were conversations for months on end about cutting this thing in thirds, picking it up and moving it. So, I mean, I guess I've heard crazier things. Then you're trying to example.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying we could build down the road. So, I mean, so our U.S. military budget right now, defense budget, according to this site, is $724 billion. Seems a bit aggressive.
So let's talk about that for a second. I know we're quickly hurtling towards the end here, but I mean, so at this point, I think everyone that's paying attention or has been paying attention for the last, I don't know, 200 years understands that war is an economy of its own, right? Like
Yep.
war is a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you're on that side of the ledger, you know, it seems insane to say, but there are people that are very, very, very in favor of war and in favor of being in battle for like whatever. When you tell me or when I hear the words or the number 700 billion in defense budget, I don't know what the number is. I'm curious if you've had this conversation maybe with Rossano or somebody else, and you have maybe a better context. I don't know what I would necessarily say is like the requisite budget that is necessary. I mean, I think that we have a worldwide platform that mandates a larger military and a more expansive military than probably anybody else. But if the number is not 700 billion, like what is the number? But whatever that number is, so let's say for the sake of this argument, let's say you cut it in half and still be comfortably ahead. So you now just found $300 billion in revenue or in money that's not being allocated to defense. So two things. Number one, obviously, if you were just to roll that back in the deficit, it goes away overnight because of the hole that we're in. But if you take those dollars and let's say that you take those dollars, and I'm not trying to advocate for welfare here because I don't think that's what this is. But if you take those dollars and you just dump that into paying for people to eat, like so you pay you spend it on farming, etc. Like you build out an infrastructure so that hunger in this country is no longer a thing. I think you could get there with $300 billion a year. I think you could eradicate. I think you could definitely eradicate domestic hunger. I think you might even be able to eradicate most of world hunger by doing that. But that doesn't seem to even be in the cards, not in the conversation. It's just, is this military budget? Is it just a profiteering thing, or is maybe okay? And now that I'm done waxing poetic, I'm curious what you think. Do you have maybe any response on what you think is sort of the necessary budget, or what that number might be in terms of what we would need to spend as opposed to the absurdity that it is?
Well, if we take your stance, which is to defend the border, then not much. Right. I mean, if
so the reason I hesitated there is because not ingrained in my answer previously is that I do believe that especially with where we are in the world today, I do believe that the U.S. has a global platform, right or wrong, indifferent or whatever. Do we want to be there or not? We have created a structure where the U.S. is the world police, and I don't think that we're in a situation where we can just say, see ya to all of those engagements and those things. Like you and I talked about the Middle East. I think it was either last week or the week before. I mean, there's an element there where you can't really just say, okay, we're done here, we're out. And so to that degree, when I say protect my borders, that's me domestically as an American talking. I also understand that the federal government would need to do things internationally to kind of protect that aim as well.
Yeah, I think it gets tricky because when you look at the South China Sea or the Suez Canal, who has the rights there, and how do we litigate those matters? And those are issues that I don't really have more than superficial thoughts on. And so on some level, I look at it and I go, well, okay, people go, well, I don't want China to be in control of that. And okay, it's like, okay, you don't want China to be in control of it, so we're out there. But when we're out there, are we doing all the right things all the right time? It's like, well, maybe we are, maybe not. Probably not. Probably not. Right. You can't see my face, so I forget about that. So probably not. So if that's the case, then are we doing better than China would do? I don't know. Maybe be in China's national interest to protect the South China Sea better than us. Maybe not. But I mean, you start getting into what actually happens in international waters, and it gets kind of murky, and it's hard to measure what would happen if the U.S. Didn't have a presence globally, if no one had a presence globally, if we were just everyone kind of protected their own borders. Well, if everyone protected their own borders and only helped our allies out in war, I don't know what that would look like. I really don't. And so it's hard to say. So I hear what you're saying, which is, well, we don't want to pull out of everywhere. And the problem is we don't know. We envision things happening, but would they happen that way is it's kind of an unknown that we just. I guess I'll say this. Whatever would happen is the unknown. What is happening is not good. And that's the problem I have. And so on some level, people were saying, what? Disagree?
I actually no. I'm not sure I heard what you said. Say that again.
Whatever would happen if we pulled out, people, I don't know. So if we pulled out everywhere and said we're just going to protect our borders, okay, if that was our stance, I don't know what would happen, right? All I know is what is happening now is not good. Now, I don't know if that'd be worse or better. I have no idea. But, we're spending money to protect the EU, and they're buying from the Russians constantly. Well, what are we doing? Like, what sense does that make? And so
Right.
you're getting all these things. That's like, well, are we? How much? To your point, and this is your point earlier. Let's go back to where we started. We'll wrap up kind of here. Is about the elite versus the citizens. How much of this military-industrial complex is the elite versus the citizens? Listen, it behooves the government to have military all over the world. They need the dollar to be the reserve currency. They need to force that down everyone's throat. And if you screw up, we're going to sanction your butt. And oh, by the way, we might drop a bomb on you.
Can you say that again, please, for the people in the back?
No, I said it once. No, but I mean, the military presence globally is to force the dollar down people's throat. And if they don't oblige, they will use sanctions, weaponize the dollar, or they'll drop a bomb on you. Don't kid yourself. Don't kid yourself. Now, you might believe in your heart of hearts that is in America's best interest. It's a matter of national security, whatever, and you're doing the right thing. I would disagree, but that is what's happening. And so,
right.
And so the reason our country can print at will is because everyone agrees that that's what should happen. They agree with it because we have military bases all over the world. Right?
Yeah. And you know what? Maybe it's like 2 minutes before we're going to log off here, so I can throw in a quick jab and you won't like pin me to the wall here. But I mean, how
hey, pray and spray right now. Let's let it go. We're about to fire the music up. So go ahead.
It wasn't even about you, but I mean, you and I talked about this off air. I mean, how do you get? And actually, you know what? I won't name names. How do you get someone that's in your circle and I kind of know peripherally to advocate for increased federal taxation? Like, I mean, I don't understand in this dynamic, in this world that we're living in, how you can advocate for the government taking more of an active role in anything. I mean, I don't care what it is. I think the government has proven to us time and time again that the only interests that they care about are their own. And under that guise, why would you invite more regulation? Why would you advocate for restriction? I'm baffled at the tenor of the conversation across the country right now, in the sense of. So let me say it differently. I was reading, and I'm going to mess this up because I wasn't reading. I was listening to it. But there was this woman on CNN yesterday. CNN, cue the laugh track or whatever. But I was listening to this woman. Actually, it was on Twitter. I saw the clip. But what she said, not verbatim, but basically what she said is the window for us to enact policies that keep people at home is shrinking, because as more data comes out about the masks, it's clear that there's nothing there. And so if we want to do these things, we have to do them now. Did you saw the same clip?
Yeah, I retweeted it. Yeah, I saw it. It's crazy.
Okay. So, I mean, but it's crazy, and it's on CNN or whatever, but that is an American person on an American media platform. I just don't understand how you can. I don't understand how you can. And this is a really dumb thing to say, but I don't understand how you can say that and want to live in this country. Like, if you actually feel that way, I would invite you to move somewhere else. Like, I don't understand how you can be a citizen here and feel that way.
I'll take the opposite side. Okay, I agree that I am pro free speech. I am pro everyone having their ability to speak. My frustration is that idea gets platformed on CNN without, like, that's a normal idea. But suggesting that we shouldn't pay taxes because the government prints at will would get laughed off CNN in a heartbeat. It's like, well, okay, hold on. Just to be clear, I have a lot better foundation for where I'm coming from than you do, CNN anchor Don Lemon, or what's Fredo's name? Cuomo.
Cuomo, yeah. Fredo. I like that.
or whomever. Like, this is actually a legit, because what I'm ultimately saying is they are taxing us, which is enslaving us or trying to enslave us, and they are devaluing our currency. Oh, by the way, we need to fight this. How do you fight this? By putting out an idea that we shouldn't pay taxes if they're going to print money, and trying to make them respond to be fiscally responsible. What she's proposing is a totalitarian state. And so if you want to get them platformed, then let's get some good ideas out there at least.
And she's and to be clear, by the way, I am not by any means coming at her right to say those things, or even her right to say those things on CNN. The point that I'm making is that if she believes that, she should go live in a country that has a government that rules that way. And this country is not built that way. If you believe those things and you want to live under a regime that enacts that, there's plenty of options for you. But that's what I meant.
Yeah, no, I know you did. I tweeted out, or I thought I did. I'll tweet it out here in a little bit. Yeah. So I'll tweet out a video of a guy, American, who lived in China during COVID, and it changed his perspective on how all of that stuff actually works. And to your point, I think more people should, and this has been part of my frustration with the media narrative about how China has eradicated COVID-19. It's like, okay, well, why don't you listen to what they actually did? Let's talk about that. I'm not even sure they did it, but let's just say that they did. Here's how they did it. Do you want that smoke? Go get you some. So I will put that on the tweet right now, and I will send that out. And folks can check that out. Ben, the music is firing up. The train is leaving the station. We have made it to another show. I don't know if we're back again. But
I still don't know which one of us is going to make it on LinkedIn Live first, but hopefully it's me.
I haven't replied, so.
Uh-oh.
I need to reply. What's your status?
You really want to know? My status is that both StreamYard and LinkedIn Live are both telling me that I'm approved and shouldn't have any issues with the stream. And whenever I've filled out a ticket for both, they tell me to talk to the other one. So it's going really well. That's
glorious. Do you have the Authenticator app on your phone?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know.
I have the Authenticator app. It asks me to authenticate every single time I log on to LinkedIn. It's a whole thing. Yeah.
Well, I hate it for you. I'm tore up. I'm really sad.
Are you really sad? You sound really beaten up.
If you could see my face, you can see that there's tears pouring down. So
before we get off, I have an idea for the next podcast.
All right, what you got?
So we each have to go to the nearest Krispy Kreme, get a dozen glazed donuts, and we have to eat them on the podcast. Oh, are you eating solid food yet?
Yes, don't want the facts. That would be terrible. The amount of smacking and fingerless licking might make the podcast more unbearable than it already is. But I'm all for going to get a dozen Krispy Kremes, so who cares? All right. Then we got 30 seconds of the music. We got to go. Ben Samuels. He will be the War Room News. Ryan Ray, the talking head himself. Until next time, folks.